Dr. Jamal was a person in whose presence you had no option but to be good, because he inspired good. There are very few people in life that when you sit with them, you always think, how can I be the best I can possibly be? Jamal was such a person. He didn't need to say anything. Just his presence inspired that in people. And there are not many people that have that charisma, that have that presence, that have that moral stature that can do that. I've also co-authored an essay in the book, and I just want to read a few lessons that I listed in the book that I want to share with you. I co-authored it with a good friend of mine, Professor Mohamed Al-Barzinji, who is a professor at the Faculty of Islamic Studies at the University of Sarajevo. We were both students in Malaysia in the 90s when Dr. Jamal was there. And these 6 lessons that we derived from our lifelong association with him, even though we didn't spend that much time with him personally as some of you did, even those few times that we were together, those little precious moments left such an indelible impression on ourselves that I wanted to share that with you. And here are the 6 lessons that we learned from Dr. Jamal. The first one is, be firm but reasonable and compassionate. Know what you want, stand your ground, but also be compassionate to other people's positions and views. Number 2, hold people to higher standard and demand excellence. And Dr. Jamal demanded excellence. I remember when I sat down with him and he was considering employing me as a director of research at the institute where he was. He asked me, so how much do you plan to publish? And I said, I think an article a year sounds reasonable. And he said, why only one? Why only one? He demanded excellence. And he could inspire it. He wasn't intimidating in that sense. Number 3, delegate responsibility to the trustworthy people. Nobody can do everything on their own, but delegating things to others is such an important mark of a leader. Number 4, take responsibility for your work and do not delay doing what is right. I remember we were working on some publications for the Institute, and because of his illness, he couldn't always reply immediately as it was in the past. I waited on him, and then he asked me, why did you wait? I said, well, I waited for your approval. He said, if you think this is the right thing to do not wait for it. Go ahead and do it. Do not delay doing the right thing. Number 5, pursue knowledge and excellence as a lifelong effort. I think we heard a lot about that, especially in Dr. Yaqub's presentation. And then finally, have a clear sense of vision and be future-oriented. No matter what he did, he was always thinking 2 steps ahead. Not only what's going to come next, what's going to come next after the next, you know. And he inspired that. We miss him dearly, but I think today's event and today's celebration of his legacy is really a great memory of him that will, inshallah, continue for a long time. Now, we do have a distinguished panel today. We have 4 panelists, and the reason they are not here because we also have a few video testimonials that we wanted to show first, so we didn't want anybody to block the view, and that's what we're going to do. We actually received many, many videos from many people who wanted to talk about Dr. Jamal's career and life and legacy, and if we showed the video, we would take the whole all the videos would take the whole session. We selected a few. But I know Unus is going to make all the others also available on the website and through email. So the first one, we're going to hear from the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim, who was a close associate, was a close associate of Dr. Jamal. They started more than almost 50 years ago. They met and they started working together on a number of issues. And so eventually, Prime Minister was able to become Prime Minister last year. He is also, I have to mention this for the sake of disclosure, he's also the trustee or honorary chairman emeritus of our Center for Islam in the Contemporary World. And so he recorded this message while he was visiting New York City. When was that? About 2 weeks ago or last week? And this was to attend the United Nations meetings. And he found the time to meet with Dr. Yaqub and to record the message in the middle of all the meetings with heads of states and everything. He knew that Jamal means so much to all of us and means so much to him that he took the time to record this message. So the first one, we're going to hear from Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. President Tracy, Dr. Yaqub, Mirza, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to join this seminar by Barzinji Institute in honor of my dear brother, scholar and activist, Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji. I recall the writings of a great French scholar who said that to honor a great man of ideas is not to bury the ashes of the dead, but to rekindle its flame. So the whole intention of a seminar is to discuss his ideas, his contribution, his criticism, and our view, assessment of his work, his dedication. I have, of course, known him for decades and seen, worked with him, stayed with him, and discussed hours on many issues affecting the society, the Muslim predicament, and also the need to enhance our understanding of society, culture. And he's a vociferous reader, and that makes him rather an exception. Books will be sent to me all the way to Malaysia. Even when I was in incarceration for years, he was there as a loyal colleague, a dedicated friend. And some new titles that I can mention, for example, which is confined mainly within the scope of study and discipline in Asia or Southeast Asia, which I have probably a little extra understanding. He would immediately order and make sure that he is able to master and understand. So I think what is important is for us to realize that this institute, Barzinji Institute, is not only to honor the man, but to live up to his expectations that society can move, can advance when they show real appreciation for scholarship and knowledge. Lazzatul Ma'rifah, as said by the fourth Caliph of Islam, that you actually appreciate the value of scholarship and learning. And I would rate Jamal in this spectacular field because rarely do you find a scholar of that stature, the love for scholarship, and continued interest in new ideas, and encourage students, colleagues to discuss based on our understanding, our preparedness to secure better lives with understanding, tolerance, in the spirit of love, compassion, and humanity. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
That's a wonderful message. The second one we're going to see from Mr. John Sununu, who was a governor of New Hampshire, and he was also chief of staff for George H.W. Bush during his administration, late 80s and early 90s. He became friend of Dr. Jamal, and when Dr. Yaqub approached him about making a video, he hesitated. Actually, it was, I think, one of the first videos we received. He immediately sent it and recorded this short message. So let us hear what he had to say.
Good day. I'm John Sununu. I met Jamal Barzinji nearly a quarter of a century ago, and over the years I've had the pleasure and the benefit of many insightful conversations with him. Many of those conversations were in difficult times for Jamal, but his calm, civil demeanor would never let you know how difficult those days must have been. I recall fondly how much Jamal loved to turn even casual conversation into an intellectual inquiry. He loved to probe, he loved to study, and he loved to examine. And he loved to argue, calmly, civilly, politely, but certainly passionately, always with a focused purpose to make things clearer to all who were involved. When you argued with Jamal, you walked away better informed, a little bit wiser, and with a stronger, deeper friendship. Jamal was insightful. He had a thirst to learn and was driven to teach. And Jamal had a deep appreciation and concern about the ethnic and cultural problems of our times. He was committed to blending the Muslim community into the American fabric, and he worked hard to help Americans appreciate the valuable contributions of the Muslim community to the American mosaic. This Felicitation volume memorializes the many roles Jamal played throughout his life, throughout his very productive life. In it, his many friends and colleagues share their fond memories of this man who had an impact on their lives. And it serves as one more contribution from Jamal to our understanding and appreciation of the strengths and importance of our multicultural social structures. A socially engaged global Muslim is a fitting and a very deserved tribute to a nice man, a smart man, a good friend, Jamal Barzinji.
Wonderful. We have one more. I was just reminded, for those who may not know, the word Jamal in Arabic means beauty. And I remember Dr. Jamal told me once, he said that when he was born, it was a cold night, his father later told him. His father, Mohamed, was an Islamic scholar and an Imam. And Dr. Jamal told me that when he was born, his father wrote in his diary, he said, "It was a bitter cold night and a son was born to me. I have named him Jamal ad-Din, the beauty of faith," abbreviated as Jamal. And that's one of the things that he mentioned to me, and I found, because it's a very intimate thing to share with someone, but I think he felt that he wanted everybody to know. He was well read. By the age of 12 or 14, he read basically all the books in his father's library. And even though ethnically they were Kurdish, not Arabic, he learned Arabic from early on and spoke Arabic in a classical and modern way that the linguists will find themselves really in awe of his Arabic language and the facility with Arabic language. And that was the case with pretty much every subject. So finally, we're going to hear from Professor John Esposito, University Professor of International Affairs and Religion at Georgetown University, also the founding director of Al Walid bin Talal Center for Muslim Christian Understanding at Georgetown University. He was also a close friend to Dr. Jamal. And I remember one of the last visits to Dr. Jamal's house late in his illness was by Professor Esposito. I was there with two of them, and we discussed a lot of issues related to the future of Muslims in America, to Islam in academia, and many other things. So you're going to hear now from Professor Esposito, and then we're going to turn to our panelists.
It is distinct honor for me to have the opportunity to remember and pay tribute to Dr. Jamal Barzinji, a true mujahid whom I have known for more than 40 years. I have known him so long that it is difficult to remember just when we first met. Retrospectively, Jamal was a powerful and unrelenting whirlwind of action, driven by his deep and abiding faith. Few have combined the 24/7 dedication and energy with a razor-sharp intellect, creative and action-oriented disposition so consistently and productively throughout his life. I cannot think of a single time or conversation in which Jamal was not turned on, and that included my last meeting with him at his home. As I noted, I met Jamal so many years ago and on so many occasions that it is difficult to remember the first time. But I soon came to see Jamal as a Muslim intellectual, visionary, activist, reformer, organizer, and Muslim community builder in the US and abroad. Over the years, many years, I came to experience a high energy, indefatigable, and creative thinker who would go on to be involved in building Muslim organizations and networks internationally. I had seen and met Jamal briefly at early Muslim organization building meetings and conferences. In my days as a graduate student and then a young professor, I would be invited to many meetings and conferences by my mentor, Ismail Al-Faruqi, also one of the founders of IIIT. But it was not until 1981 and afterwards that I began to really see Jamal in action. Jamal was one of the original founders of IIIT, along with Ismail Anwar Ibrahim, Hisham Talib, Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, Yaqub Mirza, and Taha Jabba Alwani. I can still remember the first time I visited the newly created IIIT in Herndon, Virginia. It was in a remote area, and I wondered how would this project turn out? Well, it quickly turned out. Jamal and his colleagues were dedicated Muslim pioneers on a faith-inspired mission. Jamal was one of the most extraordinary people I have known. He was a remarkable institution builder and leader, extraordinarily bright, and a multitasker par excellence. He was highly motivated, creative, and a dedicated and brilliant strategist. And most importantly, a problem solver who often seemed to welcome, almost to be invigorated by the challenge and opportunity to be a problem solver. At times, this super active, business-like personality could initially eclipse a man of deep faith, generosity, and compassion. Like Ismail and so many other major Muslim pioneers in America, Jamal sought to establish deep roots for Islam and Muslim Americans and create and build its institutions in America as well as globally. Jamal and IIIT's significant accomplishments could be seen not only in the chain of IIIT centers established overseas, but also in Jamal's service as Dean of the Kulliyah of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences at the International Islamic University in Kuala Lumpur. I happened to be in KL during that period and especially recall a special event, a luncheon, which Anwar Ibrahim, the Deputy Prime Minister, spoke at. I sat with Jamal at a large outdoor luncheon there and was struck by how enthusiastic he was throughout and how, in typical fashion, he talked about a range of reforms, projects, and programs he planned to implement. Little did I know the significant role he would play in my own life and career post 9/11. In 1993, I had been invited to move to Georgetown University and become the founding director of the Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, History and International Affairs, to build stronger bridges of understanding between the Muslim world and the West, as well as between Islam and Christianity. Its initial founders were Hasib Sabag, an Arab Christian, and a group of Arab Muslim and Christian businessmen. CMCU's activities were designed to address stereotypes of Islam and warnings of an Islamic threat or a clash of civilizations, engaging questions regarding Muslim-Christian relations, the compatibility of Islam and modern life, from democratization and pluralism to the status of women, minorities, and human rights. Post 9/11, the importance and relevance of the center was epitomized by the exponential demand and growth of the center and its faculty's involvement in media interviews, briefings of government leaders, speaking engagements, and consulting in the US, Europe, and globally. The aftermath of 9/11 brought a totally unexpected opportunity for CMCU. In that aftermath, Prince Al-Wali bin Talal, a major Arab entrepreneur educated in the US, recognized the implications of 9/11 and the war on global terrorism and the need to foster and strengthen mutual understanding among the next generations in the Arab world and the West. He determined to fund the creation of Centers of American Studies at the American University of Beirut and the American University in Cairo for Arab students to learn more about America and the West, and centers at Georgetown and Harvard in the US, Edinburgh, and Cambridge in the United Kingdom. Jamal chaired the search committee that was interviewing universities in the United States and interviewing in particular Georgetown University. By 2015, studies of American and European media and major polling reflected the normalization of Islamophobia in the US and Europe. It had become normalized in media, print media, social media, politics, etc. As a result, I decided that the center needed to create a major multi-year program, the Bridge Initiative, Protecting Pluralism, Ending Islamophobia, to address this metastasizing social cancer. Throughout the subsequent years, Jamal Barzinji took a personal and professional interest in the center. He and IIIT played an important and significant role in encouraging and supporting our mission and activities. In conclusion, let me underscore how fortunate I feel throughout my life and career to have met and to know many scholars, religious leaders, social activists, and others who've led remarkable lives. For me, I felt especially blessed to have known an exemplar, Dr. Jamal Barzinji, a scholar, reformer, and activist, motivated by faith, family, and community, his religious community, and the global community. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to invite our panelists to join the panel here.
Here you go. Testing.
All right, then. We now have 4 panelists with us, all of whom have known Dr. Jamal personally, and they're going to speak, each of them, for about 5 to 8 minutes. The shorter is better. We don't have too much time. After which, we're going to have the official launching of the Felicitation volume in honor of Dr. Jamal Barzinji. So I'm going to start with Professor Imtiyaz Yusuf to tell us about this book that we have produced and that he edited. And yeah, you can use that microphone. So Professor Imtiyaz is a senior fellow, non-resident at Center for Islam in the Contemporary World at Shenandoah University. Professor Imtiyaz, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Thank you very much, Dr. Ermin, for giving me this opportunity to talk about the volume, the book here, which I had the honor to edit and complete it over 2 years period. I met Dr. Jamal Barzinji in 1984 when I came as a student, among the first 3 students who received scholarship from IIIT. And then we had a good, long relationship. So it is an honor today, 39 years after meeting him, that I'm able to produce a book not me alone, as a whole a group of workers, of contributors, this book in his honor. Now, this was the most consuming book of my life because it took 24 hours to produce every day for 2 years with three people, me in Malaysia and Vietnam, Dr. Yaqub here in United States, and Sister Suzanne. I would complete my work in the morning after Fajr until 5 o'clock and send the file to Dr. Yaqub, and 5:30 he gets up for his Fajr prayer and starts sending me emails. And I told my wife, Dr. Yaqub is awake or has woken up. And we would continue until 2 a.m. in the morning, and he would say, go to sleep. So you can imagine, how much work has gone in producing this book of love, devotion, honor for his friend and for the family of Dr. Jamal. And we were working around 2 time zones, 12 hours difference between Malaysia, Vietnam, where I moved recently, and United States. Dr. Yaqub, Sister Suzanne were kind of my senior editors, and I was the one, and they guided me, they advised me. So it's an honor to contribute to this book. And also, the title, since I've been working on this, I work in comparative religion. The title, Socially Engaged Islam, when Dr. Yaqub discussed this idea, and immediately the title came to my mind. I said, so many books are produced about Muslim activists, Muslim workers, and Islam and Muslim societies around the world, but it's all political profiling or anthropological studies. But nobody sees how are Muslims engaged in social engagement, the old dimension of a life of a Muslim. So I believe this book captures the multifaceted aspects of Professor Dr. Jamal contribution. I want to read a verse from the Quran here. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Innal lazina qalu rabbuna Allahi summa istaqamu tatanazzalu alayhim al-malaika illa taqafu wa la tahzanu wa abshiru bil jannati allati kuntum tu'adun. نحن أولياؤكم في حياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة ولكم فيها ما تشتهي أنفسكم ولكم فيها ما تدعون نزلا من غفور رحيم. This is the verse of my favorite verse of the Quran, one of the favorite words, and I think it applies to Dr. Jamal. I read it in English. As for those who say, our Lord is God, and remain steadfast, the angels will descend on them, saying, have no fear, do not grieve, rejoice in the good news of the garden that you have been promised. I mean, for Dr. Jamal, we are your companions in this life and in the hereafter. Therein you shall have all that your souls desire, and therein you shall have all that you ask for, as a rich provision from one who is ever forgiving and most merciful. Now, I'm not going to go more and talk about the book. I want you to read it. It basically talks about how Dr. Jamal represents the spirit of social engagement, and he resonates the Quranic verses of social engagement, not only here in America, but at the global level. He devoted his whole life to the cause of human welfare, which we have talked about, without discriminating anybody. And he epitomizes the 2 concepts of ibadah, of tawheed and ibadah, which is in his devotion and his religious praxis. In this book, Dr. Jamal is remembered and memorialized as a living example of a socially engaged Muslim, not only in America, but at the global level. Thank you to Dr. Unus. He asked me to put it global Muslim, and which he did. Dr. Jamal was a global personality, which comes out from this book. He was very pragmatic, and he has left a legacy for Muslims and Americans around the world of how social engagement works. Now, as he also is a pioneering, I studied comparative religion at Temple University. So I'm very familiar with American religious history. history of America, of religion in American history. So Dr. Jamal's life and engagement was an attempt, was an achievement to forge a place for Islam on the American scene, where Native Americans, Christianity, Judaism, and African American churches have been in existence, and he makes a place available, or place for Islam on the American scene, religious scene. Now, I just want to say one anecdote between me and him. I produced the Feshrif in honor of Dr. Ismail Al-Faruqi, and Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji was the spirit behind it. And we knew Professor Faruqi for a long time, and there was no Feshrif ever produced in his honor. So I was here in 2010 as a visiting professor at Georgetown University. So I told him that I want to produce Feshrif in honor of Professor Faruqi. So while I was doing that, one day he comes to me and he says, Imtiyaz, I want to share something with you. He said, while this book is in production, I thank you. I said, why? He said, if on the day in the afterlife, in the next world, if Dr. Faruqi asks me, what did you do for me after I died? He said, I will tell Imtiyaz did it. I said, wow, you really honored me by saying that. And he laughed and he walked away. So it was really heart-touching for me, and I can never forget that anecdote with him. He was a pioneering example, as I mentioned already, for making place on the American political scene. And he has left a legacy for the present and future generations to learn and carry on the task he initiated he initiated on the American scene. So, his contribution is in different areas, especially in the area of the world of knowledge and religion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Imtiyaz, for this succinct and very direct presentation and your experiences with Dr. Jamal. Next on the panel is Dr. Iqbal Unus, who has known also Dr. Jamal for decades. He is the president of the Islamic Seminary of America. Dr. Iqbal.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I just want to share some of my time with Dr. Jamal and what I remember about him. I came to the United States in 1970, early 1970, and I think our paths crossed in 71, although I don't have much recollection of that. But in 1972, I was invited to attend as an observer a meeting of the Muslim Student Association of the United States and Canada, popularly known as MSA, which is about 9 years young at that time. And I walked into that room, which is an open hall, and there were chairs for anybody who wants to come and observe what this executive committee, supposedly the largest or the highest decision-making body, was doing. And there were representatives sitting around, and at the end of the table was the president, later as I found out, a doctoral chemical engineering student from Louisiana State University. Now, different people presented reports, executive committee members presented reports, and the normal vagueness and promises and potential things we'll do and not do, interpreted with the customary inshallah and mashallah. And the president stopped him in their tracks right away. He said, I want numbers. I want to know what you actually did. And he said that very emphatically. Now, it struck me that this was a unique group of people. I when I came to the United States, I was not coming with any allegiance or commitment or affiliation with any organization. And so I was looking for a place for myself where I can hang my hat. And it seemed to me that this group of people, with this openness and this leader who was so committed to accountability and action was the right place. And that is when I made the decision to be a part of that group. And that was more than 50 years ago, and I have never looked back. That was my first face-to-face meeting with him as a lifelong example of leader who was focused on results, not illusions. And that served me very well as I followed in his footsteps and took the same position that he had 3 years later, and so on. Now, let me add to this that when we talk about social engagement, the act of social engagement involves three things. First, a sense of empathy and an ability to compellingly communicate, and a willingness to place one's own benefits subservient to those of others. As we know from the Quran, it tells us in the words of Prophet Hud, I only desire your betterment to the best of my power. And so the essence of social engagement is desiring society or individuals to become better as much as you can help them to do that. So a sharp focus then of social engagement is related to these things. And those of you who know International Institute of Islamic Thought, IIIT better, would recognize that the most lasting and most significant contribution of IIIT has been its publications. And these publications have talked about the legacy, the purpose, and the future, which is at the heart of that enterprise. And Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji guided that undertaking superbly with a steady hand and a sharp focus. I remember one incident when he asked me to abridge a significant work of an esteemed scholar, which was translated from Arabic to English, and very well done in English. But it had the nuances of the Arabic language and the chain of hadith references and personal anecdotes and things like that. And although it was very easy and very good for an audience that was culturally sensitive to that, but would it appeal to the general American audience, Muslim or not? That was a question. So I took my first draft. I was very careful because this is a very well-established scholar. And I took it to him, and he completely rejected it without any ceremony. And he said, I was too gentle with the author's personal anecdotes and too cautious not to tamper with the cultural nuances of the work. And he told me, basically, he said, do it again and be brutal. And so I was. And when I presented that final work to him, he said, this is exactly what I wanted. And this was a favorite phrase of his. When he was satisfied, he would say, this is exactly what I wanted. I experienced that style of critique at the time. The three parts of the style. One is it's very straightforward. It gives in assessing it, makes a specific suggestion, be brutal in this case. And when it is done, he's appreciative in accepting it. And that is very important. Now, in a nutshell, social engagement is also a process of communication, interaction, and exchange, because you communicate, you interact, and exchange ideas, and so on. And Jamal was superb in all three of them. He was very focused. He would talk, he would discuss, but he would not be shortchanged. He would recognize and the arguments and give and take in it. And he was very persuasive. Now, this is a humorous incident of his persuasion skills, and I'm told by family members that this is true. I suppose it is. That he managed to get, when he was late at the gate, which he was always, managed to get the gate agent to have a plane turned back so that he could board it after the plane had left the gate. Now, this is a no-no in flight operations. But I don't know how he pulled it off. But one thing I noticed then and other places also, that his secret was to make the other party feel that they had more ability, more power, more creativity, and more agency than they really thought they had. And once he did that, The other party was totally defenseless. I had an opportunity to travel with him and work with him on a committee that Dr. John Smith also mentioned, where Tripartite was supposed to recommend certain universities to get grants and so on. And he was very focused, very deliberative, no thoughts of taking shortcuts or dispersing favors. To try to cut it short, once the Islamic Study of North America was between secretaries general, and then we needed somebody to fill in the gap. And Magid knows that better. And I had been a previous secretary general, so I volunteered, just as a volunteer, to fill the gap until they found somebody. But I had forgotten to really discuss with Dr. Jamal before I actually made the commitment. So I went to him and I asked him, this is what I would like to do just to help them out. And he said, that's fine. That is also a work. He had a global sense of the Islamic work. Tripartite was an institution, was not an institution in an island. It was part of the global work that is going on in the North American context. The last thing I would say is that the thing that distinguished, in my mind, Dr. Jamal's approach in dealing with people as a de facto leader of an intellectual movement was that he was able to separate the kernel from the chef. He always focused to the center, not the periphery. And that is why, as Dr. Imtiyaz also mentioned, that in any gathering where he sat, he could respond to what was happening, because he was not concerned with the peripheral, he was concerned with the center, with the kernel of the shelf. And whenever I had chance to talk to him, I always came out with this feeling that I did not know how long I would have wondered if I had not done what he was doing, focus on the kernel, not the shelf. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iqbal. Next, we're going to hear from Imam Mohamed Haj Magid, who is the executive Imam of the Adams Center in Sterling, Virginia, the old Dallas American Muslim Society. Dr. Jamal was one of the founders and the big contributors of the center, and Imam Mohamed Haj Magid has known him also for decades, and he can share a few stories.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you this morning of sharing a few words about Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji, rahimahullah, Allah bless his soul. When I joined Adam, Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji was in Malaysia. 1994, I was doing some volunteer teaching before I was hired. The first encounter with Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji is him and I fighting over a trash bag, literally. I didn't know who he was. Adam has a picnic. They do this monthly picnic, and he was visiting from Malaysia. And after the picnic was the cleaning. And I see this man carrying the trash bag until take all the dishes from the tables. And I said to him, no, I'm going to do this. And he said, no, I'm going to do it. And later I come to know he's the one who's giving Jum'ah next week, in Adams. That's how I come to know Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji. Humility. If you can clean the trash, collect the trash after the picnic, and you are at the time, I think was the dean in Malaysia, very humble man. And the Dr. Unus also mentioned already, Dr. Jamal was visiting and he realized there's a drought in Virginia. People are, the Virginian government, and the governor of Virginia almost declared a state of emergency. It was so bad. Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji is the one who suggested that to pray for the rain for the state of Virginia. And he led the prayer, a Friday prayer, designating that Friday prayer for asking God to bring the rain, and CNN came to that prayer because we announced that we're going to do this. I remember Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji didn't realize the media going to come, but the media came for his khutbah. One of the things that you need to realize about leaders, when they care about teaching Islam to the average person, not sitting in their intellectual ivory tower. Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji, rahimahullah, was a leader of a Tajweed class in Adam Center. Many Sudanese, especially Sudanese people, they benefit from him. Some of them now they lead prayers. And in Sudan, we have a problem between those who are Arab, Qaf and Ghain. And one of the Sudanese brother Idris, he said, my Qaf, my Ghain become Ghain and my Qaf become Qaf because of Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji. He insisted. He's so patient with him. He repeated so many times and so forth. One time he told him, when you are, you want to correct it, record it in your phone and send me the recording. And so, subhanAllah, it was so like caring about people. The other things I want to say about Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji is he's a person that comes from great heritage. There's something called, I'm going to use Sufism here, called Mawlid Al-Barzinji. This Barzinji is a big name in this mystical Islam as well. He had this kind of very amazing insight, spiritual insight. One time he asked me, because he knows these fine things in Tajweed, method of recitation of Quran, for those who are not familiar with Arabic language. He asked me one day, he said, let me ask you, Akhi. He called me my brother all the time. He said, do you know why in particular verse in the Holy Quran, chapter 25, that's why I love to recite all the time. He heard me reciting it all the time. He said, do you know why there's a pronunciation this way and not this way? I said, Dr. Jamal, tell me. And he gave me the insight of how to feel the presence of God in reciting the Holy Quran. The sound, he said, the sound is not meant to be just sound, but it has meaning. And he said, therefore, when next time you recite it, you have to feel it. You have to feel the impact of the pronunciation of the letters. Very surprising, pleasant surprise that we had the Sheikh from Sudan who visiting us, Sheikh Zain, number one reciter of Quran in Sudan. And Dr. Jamal, because he loved those Quranic reciters and loved the Quran, he asked to spend time with the Sheikh Zain. I said, we're going to bring him to your office, we'll spend time. And Sheikh Zain thought that you're going to meet an engineer, Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji. But he surprised him, he knows the different method of recitation of the Quran. And then he went and he brought a Quran he has that include all the 7 methods of recitation. And they had discussions about the impact of different methods of recitation of the Quran in the meaning of the Quran. The final thing I want to say about Dr. Jamal, he really cares about how Islam being applied in American context. He always thinking about how do you make imams, religious leaders, understanding American context. That's why one of his pledge was to help the Fiqh Council of North America, and he is in farewell speech he gave to Adam Center, was amazing speech that he emphasized of having imams and religious leaders understanding American context by applying the text to the context. And he always used to say to me that the person should spend more time knowing their context before they preach or before you teach. Therefore, may God bless his soul, and I want to be short so that they can break the record. The Imam spoke the shorter time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Imam Mohamed Magid. And finally, we're going to hear from, again, from Dr. Yaqub Mirza, and then we're going to move on to the exciting part also of launching the book. So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ermin. Assalamu alaikum again. So I'm going to talk about the book primarily, and that is to say that someone went to a bookstore and he saw a book which says that this book will solve 50% of your problems. So the person looked at it and he said, if I buy two of them, it will solve all the problems. So he did. So this book about Dr. Jamal is probably not going to solve your problems, but it will make you think about how one person can achieve so much and how many, many people love him. The idea of writing this book came from Mrs. Barzinji, commonly known as Omali, and she tasked us to finish it, and we did. My article, by the way, if you read it, you will get extra credit. So my article recognizing the significant role and the contribution which Mrs. Barzinji made, she is truly a lady behind the success of the man. By the way, I love this book. You know why? For a selfish reason. I'm quoted 16 times, and there is some praise for me for some reason, I don't know why. President Imtiyaz Yusuf, my special thanks to you for making this book to come to realization. Please give him a hand. So many thanks to all the contributors, scholars, family members, and friends for no fools who contributed to this book. Jamal was a great reader, and he always said, knowledge is power. So if you read, you get the power. Now I look around, I think I'm the oldest person in this room. So I feel that maybe I should share with you some lessons we learned with Jamal or for myself together. I suggest you should find someone, Jamal, which will be your Jamal. It doesn't have to be one person, it could be many people, but you need to identify, it could be your spouse, it could be, someone else. It could be like Tracy. And look for integrity, intelligence, and energy. Don't just find yes people. The people who just say yes, you don't need it. Yeah, it's a duplicate, you don't need them. And then see how your outputs multiply, and you will have a greater sphere of influence, and more ideas will come to you, and you can bounce back your thoughts with that person. I was so lucky to have Jamal with me, and I really benefited from it. Be generous. Give to God what is right, not what is left. Recently, I read this one, which really struck me. It says, give according to your income, lest God make your income according to your giving. See, that's a very, very scary thought. I mean, if I don't give much, my income may be reduced. You are back, person. Thank you. We missed you yesterday. So, look around. If someone is sitting in the shade today, think about it. Somebody planted that tree maybe 30 years ago, a long time ago. So be that person who plants tree today. Save and spend is one of my favorite saying. And we learn from the story of Yusuf, Joseph, which is same in Quran and the Bible. It's a long story, but to me it simply means save at the time of plenty and spend at the time of need. There is no room for arrogance. Have courage and honor. Be ethical, truthful, honest, have faith, and stand for what you believe is right. If you ask me, what I've learned in all my life, I would say people need to have courage, and they should believe in what is right, and they should have backbone and stand for what is right. Many people just give in to pressure. They give in to fame. They give in to, whatever. Ability, which is skill and will, can take you to the top. You work hard, you have the ability, you will get to the top. But what keeps you there is your character. And character, if you Google it, there are about 22 different kinds of definition of the character. I hope and pray that this book will be a continuous charity, perpetual charity, Sadqa Jariyah for my brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we have all been enriched by these wonderful reflections by people who have known Dr. Jamal for quite some time in different capacities, as a friend, as a colleague, as a mentor, as a religious leader, as an activist, as an academician. He wore so many hats and wore them so successfully. Now, Unus, I think I would need your help for this part, right? So I think the first thing that we want to do is to recognize Professor Imtiyaz Yusuf by sharing a small gift with him in recognition of his contribution to this volume and to the book that was produced in honor of Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji.
All right, wonderful. So once again, this is really a remarkable achievement in terms of publishing a book and compiling all of these memories of a person. And I actually have an article contributing to the volume. And as I was reflecting on the book itself, I would say, I hope one day when we pass away, someone will remember us and write about us. So yeah, for all of us, this would be something really amazing. So hopefully we can continue the memory of Dr. Jamal Barzinji through the Barzinji Institute. We wanted to give two gifts in honor of this publication. The first one will go to Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf, and he is someone who is the editor of the volume. Without this book, without Imtiyaz, this book would not have been possible. And I want to share just one quick anecdote. We were reflecting on our way here that when the first Barzinji project iteration, we actually traveled to Malaysia, and I was so impressed with Malaysia, I actually took my family the following summer there. And I got an apartment in ISTAC, which is an institute at IAUM. And they gave me a nice apartment. And that night, we didn't have any groceries. So I went to the neighboring apartment and knocked on the door. And I said, I need milk for my daughter, who was young at the time. And Dr. Imtiyaz actually opened the door. And from that moment, we gained a friendship. And from that, this book actually developed. We got to know one another. I introduced him to CICW, and he went on to publish several works, including this one. So thank you so much, Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf. Oh, yeah,
You can stand over there in the center.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go. The second gift we want to give to the Center for Islam in a Contemporary World. They're the ones that published this book. And the CICW has done so much for Shenandoah University and the Barzinji Institute. For instance, they funded a lot of our trips. They've also supported Global Citizenship Project. Dr. Ermin actually led a trip to Bosnia and Sarajevo with a group of Shenandoah University students. They've helped us in terms of consulting, advice. One story for Dr. Ermin is he's actually the one that helped us initiate the relationship in Malaysia. So when Adrian was the provost, Adrian and I traveled to Kuala Lumpur, and Dr. Ermin met us there. And I remember we were staying in the same hotel. We were both jet lagged, and we were walking in the streets of Kuala Lumpur together. And he was teaching me about Malaysia, teaching me about the partnership, talking about his experiences as a student at IAUM, and then later graduating from there. So the Barzinji Institute really appreciates our relationship with the Center for Islam in a Contemporary World, CICW, and we look forward to the continuing partnership between you, the Barzinji Institute, and Shenandoah University in general. So we do have some time for questions, Dr. Ermin, if you'd like to, and then we can conclude this session with official launch of the book.
So this session has been extended to 1.5 hours because the previous one was shortened from the initially 1:15 to 1 hour. And the reason is we wanted people to be also able to ask questions or maybe share their memories about Dr. Jamal Barzinji. So we may have 5, maximum 10 minutes for that before we go for the official book launching. So if anyone would like to ask a question, the microphone is there. You may identify yourself and share your question or comment with us. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Zainab.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My name is Zainab Alwani. I'm Taha Jabir Alwani, who is very close, of course, friend and brother with Dr. Jamal. And I thought maybe to share with you at least the voice of my father today, which was the last, this is very emotional event for me because of both of them. I was close to them, of course. But the testimony, the last testimony of my father, I think represents Dr. Jamal's character and summarize what kind of a person he was. So please allow me to read my father's words. He said, I sanctify justice, celebrate freedom, and honor humanity, while demonstrating gentleness with the weak. I remind the strong that there is always someone who's stronger than him. I advise the rich to fulfill the rights of the poor, while I remind the poor that the rich among them have been entrusted with God's wealth to fulfill the rights of the poor. I love goodness and gentleness and reject evil. I invite to piety and reject violence. I cling to the rope of guidance and uphold the truth. Sorry. I fight lies and deceit and forbid corruption. I seek reconciliation to the extent possible. I yearn for peace and despise war. I love humility and strive for a good life. I stand in awe of death, yet I believe that this is a bridge I must cross, to cross from a fleeting life to one that is eternal. I desire the best ending and seek refuge in God from the contrary. I love heaven and detest hellfire. I seek security and hate instability. I abhor hatred. I'm not profane, destructive, or corrupt. My lineage extends to Adam and Eve. For Adam is my father and Eve is my mother. All of humanity are my sisters and brothers. I do not disdain, betray, or humiliate a single human being. Rather, I strive to guide the human beings, light their path, and walk with them along the path to heaven. I seek to be a roadblock between them and falling into hellfire. I love the universe and belong to it. I love all my neighbors in the universe, including its trees, plants, rocks, animals, mountains, and rivers. God, most majestic, has created me from this earth. To this earth, he will return me to it. And from this earth, he will restore me once again. To this earth I belong, and for its cultivation I call. My desire is to elevate the truth. My goal is to spread peace, and security in it. My means is to struggle with my own soul in order for peace to be realized and security to prevail. I invite to God, to whom is my ultimate return. Peace is my objective. Security is my desire. Terrorism is my enemy. Conflict is my adversary. Inner peace is my pursuit. Do you recognize me? Do you know on this earth anyone who parallels this description? I'm Muslim.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zainab. Dr. Yaqub.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Zainab, Dr. Zainab. Appreciate reminding us about Sheikh Taha. Those of you who were in our house in Woodstock, I mentioned that we were a group of 6 people, and 3 have passed away and 3 are left. And Dr. Taha Jabir Albani was one of them, and Abdulhamid Suleiman, father of Ermin Suleiman, who is here, was the second one, and then Jamal Al-Barzinji. So I just want to mention that we have published a book on Sheikh Taha, his methodology, his life, which is available in Arabic on our website, which has been translated into English, and very soon that will be published also. He was a great scholar of our time, and we certainly learned a lot. He was also a neighbor, so we lived very close to each other. We used to pray Fajr in his basement, and we used to rotate different houses where we prayed Fajr, and Unus used to have the key for the basements. So we certainly miss him, recognize him, and hopefully the book is available. And if the family agrees, we want to have a similar program like this one in his honor. And Magid had suggested he loved Quran, so we want to have a seminar on Taha Jabir Al-Wani and his love to Quran. And so stay tuned. We should have that program very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have time for just one more question, and I would like this to come from students, if possible. We haven't.
My name is Ermin Abu Sulaiman. So I'm not really prepared to, I didn't prepare this, so you have to bear with me. Most of you know Dr. Jamal as a scholar, as a person that achieved lots of things. I knew him more as a father figure. Since I was a small child, I saw him throughout his life. His relationship with my father was extremely strong. I would see them sit down, argue, raise their voices, and have long discussions. But every time they came out of it smiling and happy. What I'd like to emphasize, Dr. Jamal was extremely unique. I mean, he was a great person. The whole group that they worked together, every one of them had a strength area. And every one of them had a very weak point. None of them was great as an individual, but they were great as a team. And that's the message that I'd like to share with you guys, is that if you want to achieve and be great, find people that share your same value, that have great strengths, and work together and complement each other and have their back. That's the only way to, that's how Triple IT, Dr. Yaqub, and the whole group succeeded. It wasn't because Dr. Jamal was the great person, or Dr. Abdul Hamid, or Dr. Al-Wani, but because they worked together, they loved each other, they had the common objectives, and they did great things. So I hope that with these with the sessions, that you get to know the whole team and aspire. If you find somebody that you respect and find him as a great person. Try to get to know him more, try to work with him, and you can achieve so much. Thank you.
So if
Thank
I
you very
may
much.
add, we also published a book on Abdul Suleiman. It's in Arabic, and that was one of the first book or second book we published after Ismail Faruqi. So we are remembering all the great men who existed, and it just takes time for us to process. But Imtiyaz is in the process of working on next book, which will be on Najat Siddiqui, who was the great Islamic finance banker, economist, who received the Faisal Award in Saudi Arabia, just like equivalent to Nobel Prize, and we should be working on that. So the idea is to recognize and document these books which are writing, by the way, are not just books to write. We are trying to summarize the works of each of the scholar so we can read it. Like Sheikh Taha wrote 28 books. And I asked Unus as a scholar, will you read all of them? He said, well, I said, okay, we will summarize his teachings, his lessons, and what advice he has for us in a book so you can read it. So that's the process what we are following. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So now I would like to invite Unus to lead us to the book launching ceremony.
So once again, let's give a round of applause for this panel. Thanks so much. Personally, I learned so much from this panel, this idea of global friendships. I mean, these were people from different cultures, different societies, different languages. They worked together on common projects. Also, this idea of remembering someone. The people we sometimes forget relationships, but even 8 years after Dr. Jamal Al-Barzinji passed away, you see his memory is continued. And I think this wonderful connection we talk about here at the Barzinji Institute about the future of work. If you think about this book was, we have CICW here in the United States working with a scholar in Malaysia. It was printed also in Malaysia. Then Imtiyaz moved to Vietnam. There are people from all over the world that contributed. The book in itself is a project that we can emulate and learn from here at the Barzinji Institute. So with that, I want to move to the official launch of this book. So I'd like to invite Firas, if you like, to come up, and Amma Sazan. So Firas is the son of Dr. Jamal Barzinji. Amma Sazan is the wife and widow. We would like to go ahead and launch the book, and then we have a special book signing. We have free copies of the book for anyone who is interested. So we'll go ahead and launch it. The books are available here. You can move over to our beautiful Shenandoah backdrop and get a book signed for you. So, okay. So I'll, Frost, you want to say? Okay, so great. So Frost is maybe also, Ermin, do you want to do it? I was also with Frost from CICW. So. I'm just going to take a photo.
That's not what we meant. Like we said, we have the books available here, so whoever wants to get a free copy, you're most welcome. And then you can also get it signed and take photos if you will. So.
So Fraz, you come this side.
Yeah, you can come on that side.
Move forward.
All right, wonderful. So we officially conclude this session. We invite you up to grab a book of Dr. Jamal Barzinji, a socially engaged global Muslim, and you're welcome to get a book signed by the editor, Dr. Imtiyaz Yusuf.